Well, hello, everybody. As you know, we're coming on late. I won't ask and say anything to John.
I was technically challenged today. I'm coming to you live from the Music City this week and had a little bit of issues with connecting. So my apologies to our viewing audience. Totally my fault.
That's okay. It's fashionably late is what we say, right? But hey, John, we have a special guest today. I mean, as you can see on social media, I was pumping it up over everywhere. I mean, and I did not know our special guest is at the beach. You know, I love the beach. It's part of my name. The shark is at the beach all the time. But here she is, the one and only Robin Mee from Me Derby. Hey, Robin, how you doing?
Welcome,
Richard,
Robin.
John, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here today.
And she is live from her beach house.
Well, I would say my friend's beach house, Richard. I have been embracing the digital nomad lifestyle. When everybody can work from anywhere, I usually am working from my home office, but this week I'm in Bethany Beach.
Nice.
Yeah, because your model has always been a remote model anyway, so this was no different for you, but now you're taking it to new heights.
Well, honestly, for 20 years, we had an office on K Street, right around the corner from the White House. And this was back in the day when branches, I mean, that's all we knew were branches, right? But, you know, fast forward, you've got technology. We use Bullhorn. I've got staff already around the country. And we thought our business is now national. Everything is being done through video and internet and technology. Let's give it a shot. Let's try and see what a remote how it would be for us to go remote. We can always go get an office. And 10 years later, we are still remote and really embracing it now.
Love it. Love it. So I'll tell you what, John, we're just going to deep dive into it. Robin, everybody knows you in the industry. And if you don't know Robin, boy, you're going to know her after this. But,
do you want to give her a platform to give her 30 seconds, so to speak, a little background on her and what she does in Me Derby?
John. That's where I'm going
Sorry,
with
I'm overstepping my bounds, Richard. My mistake.
Johnny's all pumped up because
I am pumped up.
It's all good. So
I'm
Robin,
a big fan of Robin.
Give us like 5-minute tour of the Robin Mee. How you started all the way up to where you're at now.
All right, you guys. Thank you again. Okay, so Me Derby launched 32 years ago after having a short career in the staffing industry. My first boss was Peter Yesney, who went on to found SIA. Now, he didn't know that at the time. I didn't know that at the time. I actually started my career putting in kind of public service staffing. I ran the summer youth employment program for Fairfax County, which is the biggest county outside of Washington, D.C. And we put low-income youth, disadvantaged teenagers to work in the summers. And I did that for summers in college, 3 years after that. And I really wanted to get into private industry. So, it wasn't a big, really, leap to find myself in the staffing industry. And after 7 years, launched a company that was a search firm for the staffing industry. And we have grown, evolved, changed. I mean, as the industry has grown, we have grown. Today, I've got a team of 13. I've got a core team of executive recruiters. We do executive search just for the staffing industry. We place managers and executives in staffing companies from startups to some of the largest staffing companies in the world, all over the country, every staffing vertical. And as you know, there is a staffing company out there for every occupation possible. I'm constantly learning. So this, we've got a team of very tenured, not only is my team tenured before they got to Me Derby, our average tenure in the company is 16 years with the company. Wow. So we are engaged, we are collaborative, 80% of the work that we do, 75% of the work we do is contingent management search. 25% of the work is executive leadership search. And it is, while we've been remote for 10 years, we started in DC. So I think 5 of us are in the DC metro area. But we collaborate. We're on video 3 times a week together. 80% of the searches that we do are collaborative searches. And this is an extraordinary group of people whose mission, whose vision is to provide the very best in executive search to the staffing industry, and not just to the client, but to our candidates and everybody. You guys, what we've done, and I think we've all done it, frankly, together, is that we've built community. We are part of this, as SIA calls it, the workforce solutions ecosystem. So if you've never seen this infographic, go to my website and just look at about the staffing industry, and you'll see it there. It's this infographic that has search and staffing in the core, in the middle of this circle, and then all around that circle are all of the tangential services and resources that support the industry. And we all just keep growing. I think that, this current where we are right now, as we are evolving out of this past 15 months of COVID induced economic recession, is that I was saying to Richard, my vision is that the staffing industry is going to be the engine, part of the engine that's going to put Americans back to work. And then you add, that we've kind of hovered around a 2%, 2%, temporary, what is it, John?
What, the inflation?
No. The workforce is about 2% made up of contingent workers, not contingent workers, but temporary workers. The contingent workforce is far bigger than that. Temporary penetration rate. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And then we come out of this, and I think we're going to see this is going to have been a real catalyst for the penetration rate, the temporary employment penetration rate to expand. More people working in contract positions and temporary positions and gig jobs, this whole contingent workforce. But that's 100% of our mission, is to put the very best practices in place to help all of the staffing companies hire the very best people they can, and for staffing professionals to help them elevate in their careers. I mean, that's what everybody wants, right?
Exactly.
And in some cases, like Richard, you were talking about being an agent. I just filled a position, a group president for a creative staffing company, and I have known the woman that we placed for 20 years. I've been watching her career for 20 years.
That's and this our business.
It's extraordinary the way we impact people one job at a time, and it doesn't matter what niche you're in. Mm-mm. It just so happens that my niche is staffing the staffing industry.
I love it. And you know what? Anybody in the staffing industry, if you need a job, you got to call me Derby. Am I right? I mean, seriously.
Absolutely. They are
in front of everybody. They're the best.
Standard by far. And I've known Robin for a number of years, initially, like many relationships, through ASA. And the work that she and her team do is unbelievable. And it's a testament when you talk about, I love hearing stories like that, Robin, where you've known someone for 20 years. And that's, if you do this job right, we've always said this a number of times, if you do it the right way, those are the types of relationships that you get to build as recruiters. And that's the fun part. And that's the privilege of being in this business.
And the kind of insight you gain from having a relationship for 20 years. And I'm not saying that every person we place we've known for 20 years, but you have the opportunity. And that's where this building community comes from. I mean, John, perfect example. We have not actually, you nor I have ever had a business transaction where you've made money from one of our services or vice versa. However, we are we are colleagues. I consider you colleagues. Richard, you're my newest colleague on this call.
Yes.
Because that is who we are, and it is all about the relationships. Totally. And in fact, you think everybody knows me, Derby. They don't. I will never know everybody in our industry, but what an opportunity, right? What a challenge to do exactly that. And it is a privilege, really, to be part of what I consider to be just the most amazing industry. When you think about the impact we have on people's lives, yep. Richard, the kind of work you're doing, which, I should be interviewing you so you could talk about what you're doing. It is a privilege to put people to work. We impact people's lives in such a profound way. And then our lives are enhanced by doing so.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Richard.
Real quick, Robin, you got to say, you cry when you put people to work. I mean, I have tears in my eyes for joy. I mean, seriously, that's how deep dive we are into this industry. Go ahead, Johnny.
We're passionate about it. Robin, when you first started I'm going to transition to our focus today because it's an important one. When you first started your own business 32 years ago, what were the challenges you faced, not just of starting a staffing business at that time or in general? So you're going out in your own entrepreneurship, but being a woman and starting a business, were there any challenges you faced and any obstacles that you encountered that you felt were either to your advantage or to your disadvantage at the time? And how has that changed moving forward?
Okay, first of all, I want to say that my mom was a huge the biggest mentor in my life. And she worked in the war on poverty. She worked in the staffing industry in like 1960 when we first moved to Washington from Ohio, for a Western franchise. But then she got into the war on poverty, and she was involved with helping, disadvantaged people get employment and get training for employment. So I always had this vision she was a really empowering vision. And she became very much a mentor to most of my friends because she was a successful working executive woman throughout my whole life. So there wasn't anything I felt like I couldn't do. It was a big decision to do this. But I also had the benefit, and this is a advantage, not a disadvantage. But, like you were saying, ASA has been a really important part of our professional staffing world. So I'm at a local ASA chapter in DC, Capital Area Staffing Association. There was a woman named Helga Tarver, and Helga had a very successful privately held staffing company called Telesec that she ended up selling to core staff. So she heard me saying I needed an office. Back in those days, if you wanted to do staffing search, you had to have a license. You had to have a professional address, commercial address to get that license. And she heard me saying this. She calls me up and offers me a free office in her DC K Street.
Wow.
Location. And it was so generous. It was so, we talk about sponsorship and allyship. This was someone who didn't know me, who just heard I needed something. And I'm starting a business. I'm a young entrepreneur. And she gives, it's the most generous thing she could have done. So, there were these little golden opportunities along the way. John, I didn't feel like there were any challenges that were not easily addressed. And part of it had to do with, my growing professional network at the time. When I didn't know something, I knew who to call. John, you've been that person for me so many times. Every couple of years, Me Derby goes through a compensation analysis. I want to make sure we're paying our recruiters competitive and fair, and that the package is what it should be. So we look at it every couple of years. I call John every couple of years. John, benchmark this with me. But then I also call 5 or 6 other people who I've gotten to know and through the industry who do what I do, which is executive search. And that's what I did when I started too. And I started small. It was me. And I had this free office in the Telesec office. And then I had a business partner for a year later. I had a business partner for a year. And we're still great friends. But, her business was not staffing the staffing industry. It was doing search in legal. And little did we know there was a small little recession at the moment. So she left, but we kept the name. And then I hired my first, office administrator, and then the next recruiter. And we built it slow and steady, but solid, and making, good decisions along the way. So it's interesting because I actually run a staffing company, but our industry that we serve is the staffing industry. And so you look at ASA and SIA, both as pivotal organizations that have supported me. And it's primarily the relationships that evolve that help get me every step of the way.
And you've been a big advocate, Robin, leading the charge for not just women in staffing, but women advancing into leadership positions in staffing. Take us down that road about how that passion started to emerge and what really sparked it.
So again, my mom, later in her career,
great role model on your mom. I love hearing that.
So she did glass ceiling reviews. She was the last part of her career. She was with OFCCP, Office of Contract Compliance, which does make sure that any company that has a government contract has an effective affirmative action plan. She did glass ceiling reviews at some of the biggest companies in America. I mean, how fascinating is that? Wow. Looking at it from that lens. But in 2015, SIA really led the charge in opening up women in leadership issues, bringing them to the forefront in staffing by starting their Global Power 100 Women in Staffing. So they identified and still are doing this annually, identifying women who are trailblazers and executives and entrepreneurs and really shining a light on those people. Now it's 150, and they look at both U.S. and global. But that makes up that 150. And there was an annual dinner, and Bullhorn sponsored it. We would all get together at Executive Forum, but it was just a minute, right? It was just that one night. It was the visibility, but then it was getting together one night, and there wasn't as you met people, but it was. I mean, ASA then takes the concept of women in leadership, and in 2017, Kelly Verberg, who's vice president at ASA, leads this initiative to explore how ASA can support women in staffing and bringing education and resources and visibility to gender parity and highlighting. So it took, there was a year or two. And what ASA does when they set up a new, and I was on the steering committee to set up this Women in Leadership Interest Group. And today, that Women in Leadership Interest Group has 38 council members, and these are the leaders that really now under Diana Mertz, who took the leadership of the group from ASA perspective. And so there's 38 council leaders and over 700 women in the interest group. In 2019 was our first pre-conference at Staffing World.
I remember that because my pre-conference run up against you.
That's right. I remember. I couldn't do that. And Me Derby was asked if we wanted to, and we eagerly said yes, to be a co-sponsor of the Women in Leadership Interest Group. So today, you've got Workin, Clear Edge Marketing, Me Derby, and Sense as co-sponsors of this group. And then the primary sponsors are Bullhorn, Assurance, EGS, ESG, and Anthem. So we get together as a steering committee, if you will, supporting the council, supporting the organization. And, 2020, everything went remote. And we had two of the most amazing, we branded it Thrive events. And this was a time when, in retrospect, nobody knew what was happening. When would we see each other? There were so many challenges, and Thrive brought people together in this really beautiful community. And it was the first one, both of them, all of them that have been remote. Now we've had 3, 2 in 2020, 1 in 2021. That one was just 2 weeks ago. We had you guys we all had 640 women on a half.
Holy cow.
I'm sure there could have been some men there, but it was 640 people for a half-day event that was chock full of, kicked off by Heather Monahan, who is an amazing speaker. She's written a book, and we had one author, speaker, thinker, subject matter expert after another talking about all sorts of fascinating things. This woman, Jen Grace Barron, is one of 3 executives that founded Inspire Corps, and they've written a book, and it's a super academic orientation towards how to be inspirational. And it's new thinking, really outside of the box thinking. We had 4 women staffing industry executives talking about their path, their story, and some of the challenges and some of the opportunities, and talking kind of like we are here. We had 2 breakout sessions. They were facilitated. The breakouts are wonderful, interactive conversations. And, they were 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes each. And, everybody's sending each other LinkedIn invitations afterwards. Real relationships get formed remotely. So now we have Thrive Live getting ready to kick off Staffing World. So it's one of the pre-cons.
Oh, that's exciting.
Love the name.
Thrive. I know, right? We've got some brilliant marketing. For example, Leslie Vickery.
John. I love my marketing.
That's right.
I don't know if you've met Leslie Vickery. You need to have her on this show.
That we do.
Clear Edge Marketing.
We will. Invites out.
Yeah. And so all the people that are involved in this organization, everybody's doing different things. Let me tell you something that Leslie's been doing. 4 years ago, she launched the Edge podcast. It is an hour, up to an hour interview. She's had 80 women leaders in the staffing industry that she has profiled.
Nice.
I go on my dog walks in the morning and I put, get on the Edge podcast just to, hear who she interviewed last week. The most recent one, I think, is Christy Willis, who is chief sales officer at one of the True Blue companies, People Ready. She was one of the people that actually that spoke at Thrive 2 weeks ago. So, okay, if we had 640 people 2 weeks ago at Thrive, how many are we going to have at Staffing World Live when everybody is just ready?
Oh my!
And I remember when you had that first pre-con, and there was a big buzz about it. And like I was saying, I was like in the room right next to Robin's, getting ready to start a workshop. And I just poked in to say hi to Robin and her associate Kim, who I go way back with. And the energy in that room, and that was the first pre-con, I was like, holy cow, who wouldn't want to be in this room? And it was just, you could feel that there was something seriously taking shape there. And clearly it's got roots that are going way, way deep, and it's not going to slow down, which is awesome.
So let me tell you two really cool things that are happening. One is that this is the second year, I think, of a mentor match program. So, and this is the first year I've participated. We're just ending our first.
Now, is this under the Thrive umbrella?
This is under Women in Leadership Interest Group.
Gotcha.
So we are, this past first half of the year, we had 115 people who signed up. Either you wanted to be a mentee or a mentor. So the mentees were matched with the mentors, and it's a 6-month program to basically support, elevate, and the mentees, right? Giving them resources and connections and visibility to other women executives in the industry, and no secrets, open the kimono, whatever you need. And so we had 115 the first half of the year. We're getting ready right now. I think today or tomorrow is the last day you can sign up for this next half a year. And we also have a scholarship program that kicked off last year. I mean, all these things, so many things happened for this Women in Interest Leadership Group in COVID that, was such a silver lining. So scholarship program, 2 scholarships are being given out to rising leaders in the staffing industry, women. You have to identify as a female. You have to be in the industry, I think, for 6 years. And it's a free Staffing World and a Thrive Live. So 2 people that a lot of companies.
That's incredible.
They're only sending a couple people to a Staffing World event. So, but guys, what you get out of going to Staffing World, it's education, it's networking, it's the experience of being with 2,000 of your peers. And who knows how many people are going to come out this year, because I think everybody is so ready.
There'll be a lot of hugs and fist pumps this year. Look out. Can't wait.
And we have town halls. We have webinars. There are so many ways of engaging. And honestly, I think COVID I think this past 15 months brought this group together and expanded its visibility in ways that I don't know. I mean, it was a silver lining because so many more people could participate. The event, the Thrive event was, I don't know exactly. It was very it was priced so well that anybody, most people could attend, and companies could send not just one, but as many people as wanted to go. I know at Me Derby, we sent everybody who wanted to go.
The last one you had, I have a staff of 3 females, and they all went, and they absolutely raved about it afterwards. So all of a sudden you got, it's like, all right, you got 3 more recruits in the fold that are hopping on the bandwagon. And I can see how that movement would just blossom after something like that, with more and more people spreading the word. And it all started with an idea that was cultivated and pushed by yourself and a number of others. So kudos to you for really, getting together with other like-minded leaders and really, pushing and forging the way for this to happen, because it is important for our industry. And how great is it that there is something to be said where, sure, I can take anyone under my wing. Richard, you can take anyone under your wing and you can mentor them. But there's something where someone that is like yourself reaches down and says, hey, I've achieved success. You can too. You can be just like me. And you see yourself in that person. And you're creating those relationships, which can only help the development of those younger people.
Well, and so many things have spawned from here. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the IDEA or group. It's the latest council within or interest group within ASA. But you look around, issues of gender and women in leadership, and IDEA stands for inclusion, diversity, equity, and advocacy, with the spotlight on diversity and inclusion. ASA and the staffing industry is recognizing, I think, the importance of bringing education around these issues to our industry. And so that launched in 2020. And I think they're up to they're somewhere between 500 and 600 members now. They've got 20 some odd council members, and you're going to see more and more coming out of that IDEA group next. And then also what happened, a couple things. So at the executive forum in 2020 that didn't happen, a group of women leaders were informally getting together. There were about 15 of us to celebrate Joyce Russell's book that she wrote and she published, or it was published early in 2020. But unfortunately, the speaking tours got canceled because anyway, we were getting together to celebrate her new book, Put a Cherry on Top. And so we ended up taking that dinner that didn't happen and doing a remote session of Joyce. Most of us had read the book for her to, speak about the book. And it launched this is like an informal thing, an informal lady leaders book club. And so now this is being really led by Leslie Vickery, who I mentioned, and Lauren Jones, who has been on your show, and Lauren, who started Woman Crush Wednesday, highlighting women in the staffing industry at practically every Wednesday since last year. And this Lady Leaders Book Club, where almost monthly we've been meeting, we've been reading a book, and the author's been coming to talk with us. And we've done this, practically every month during COVID. And that spawned a DE&I group of like-minded women executives who are really interested and passionate about the issues of diversity and inclusion. And we bring in speakers, and then those speakers come in. I mean, Delibra Wesley, for example, who is a woman of color, executive, CEO. Well, she was COO of the Delta companies, is now just launched her own company. And there's a bunch of women. Jeanette Harvey's another one who just launched her own company. We are celebrating these people. I mean, it's spawning all these relationships. I mean, Delibra came and spoke to me, Derby, just as a Q&A, because we are getting, you're probably not surprised to hear me say there's not a lot of diversity in the staffing industry. There's not enough diversity in the staffing industry. But we're getting calls from our clients saying we want a diverse slate of candidates. Now, the very first one, this was a couple of years ago, was AMN. They have got a requirement that every slate of candidates for internal hires has to have diversity in that slate. And that is, very progressive. But now we're having, practically every search or every inquiry where the company is saying, how will you provide diversity in your slate of candidates? So we've been grappling with that, and we brought Delibra in to help us, talk about this and figure this out. And then last year, 2020, 2 organizations did DE&I surveys in the staffing industry. So you're probably familiar with Eric Gregg, Clearly Rated. He brought Net Promoter into Best of Staffing, right? Best of Staffing client, Best of Staffing for customers or customer satisfaction talent. Anyway, he's doing internal talent surveys now we just did it actually at Me Derby. But also he did a survey of, I think it was 4,000 staffing companies, and asked a bunch of questions about internally. And I'll give you a couple of stats. Based on his survey, 61% of branch managers in the staffing industry, but based on the survey results, are women. But by the time you get into the executive ranks, it is less than 29%.
Big drop off.
They drop off, or they drop out, or they are not elevated. In people of color, that number is 16%. People of color, women, branch managers. No, I don't think it was women, you guys. I think it was people of color and
in general
2% at the executive level. So
Man.
60%, 29%, 16%, 2%. Clearly not much diversity. There's another, then there's a Women's Business Collaborative, WBC, is an organization that's not specific to the staffing industry, but it's about elevating women and equity and pay equity and gender equity. And so they started, Kip Wright from Genuint and Barb Bruno, who's a trainer, Good as Gold Training, lead the staffing, and this just happened last year, the staffing stream interest. It's basically a staffing working group. It's a staffing stream working group. And they also did a survey last year, and their numbers were a little bit different, but similar results. And that is, women are not, there is a pay equity disparity between women and men in the staffing industry. There is not enough diversity. They said that people of color less than 10% across all positions in the staffing industry.
Wow. And when you're talking pay and equity, Robin, you're talking at more the higher level, the leadership positions, the salaried and bonus types versus when I think of a recruiter on a desk, if you're in a majority of situations, a recruiter earns their money on a desk largely through commissions. So there it's you have the potential, the opportunity to earn as much as you want. But then when you get into moving up the food chain and you're not working a desk, so to speak, but you got your hands in it, but you're managing others, that's typically when all of a sudden you come out of the commission space and your salary gets more flattened. And that's where you're probably seeing the inequities.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, based on some other studies I've seen, it's at the management level. And it also, for men, they end up in management. They elevate into management much sooner than women do. And so they've already got, this leg up. But those numbers of 61% branch managers, women, and less than 29% at the executive table is just.
It makes you wonder, okay, why aren't they kept going up the food chain? Like where that's where it's clearly, because you look at, how many people get to that level, and all right, there's a subset that's not ready to advance and won't advance because they're capped and they're at the right role. And there's a subset that might not want to advance, but for that subset that wants to, why can't that number be greater? And are they, that's when you start to think, okay, are they just not being considered? Are they being overlooked? And that's where the inequities come into play.
Well, they also drop out. There's a percentage that drop out because they don't have enough support, and you might even say flexibility to be able to figure out how to continue elevating in their career, staying in the workforce, and have a family. And so it is. So we see that there is a big drop off, partially because there hasn't been enough support for women in the workforce to be able to do both. But, well, how can that change? What needs to change? And I think that the COVID is we're in this transformative time, and we obviously know that, almost 100% of professional staffing, people in the professional staffing sector have been working from home. They've been remote. It's not been the case in commercial staffing. And what's it going to look like? Because, the staffing industry was not very flexible for remote work.
No, not at all.
I mean, it shocks me because I would have thought the industry would have embraced it much earlier, much more so before.
Well, because the old saying goes, if you're a recruiter, all you need is a phone and a computer. Doesn't matter where you are. And, if you were in a local market, I think, part of it, and I grew up in a local market direct hire environment where you were expected to meet every candidate in person because you were servicing the local business community. Now there's so many, if you're a recruiter that does long lines recruiting and recruits nationwide, you're not going to meet all your candidates because they're all over the place. So it's more accepted now. And to your point, Robin, I think a lot of bad came out of COVID from a physical perspective on our community across the country, but there were a lot of good things that came out of it. One of which was the fact that people realized that, you know what, it's okay to have a life. And you have to balance it, because all of a sudden your home became your office and your office became your home. They were one and the same. So for those that had other responsibilities, companies had to open their arms and embrace that and work around those schedules. And, oh, by the way, at the end of the day, guess what? The work still got done. So it was a big epiphany saying, you know what, we can do this, and there can be a level of sanity, and you don't have to kill yourself. So, you get back to the question. So I think that women leave the industry. They, there isn't any there is very little built-in support and very little built-in flexibility to support women in the workforce that also have any other responsibilities outside of work. But then there's also this old saying: men are hired for potential, women are hired for experience. And women have to be also hired for potential. Very few people have everything it takes. When you look at a job description, very few people have all of those things. They don't. And there needs to be flexibility around what is really a requirement and what really isn't a requirement. And what can we learn? We teach, And I think that for us to have greater diversity, and I mean gender diversity and people of color in our industry, which is, in many cases, there's not enough of either, not enough women in leadership, not enough people of color in our industry at all. We've got to be looking at what we're doing to attract and then support and elevate people, all people, once we get them here. So we need to be, and I encourage companies to build and, hire recent college graduates, and in some cases, people that don't have degrees, and be recruiting from a much broader, population of people. Go into those historic Black colleges and universities. Go to community colleges. Don't be fishing out of the same ponds you've been. Or think about it. We pay people recruiting bonuses when they recruit their college buddies, their fraternity brothers, their sorority sisters. Well, you're getting the same people. There's no diversity there. But, spend some of those. Matter of fact, Jeanette Marks at AirSwift, she's the CEO of I think she is the CEO of AirSwift. She is.
Now, yeah. She came up with that epiphany. I'm going to take those referral dollars and put them in other places. So we are having, because she said, I looked around and everybody came from like 2 colleges, as opposed to having, a much more diverse workforce. So think about how we're bringing people in, and then how we're training them, and then working to retain them. We have to create these inclusive workforces, places of employment. And we need to rethink what's a requirement and what isn't a requirement, because there's not enough staffing industry professionals for everybody to hire the exact same people. And we don't have enough diversity. So hire from outside the industry whenever possible.
Exactly. To your point,
AMN is doing, and require diversity, a diverse slate of candidates on every search that you do.
Regardless, to your point, regardless of race, creed, color, or gender, hire for potential. And that potential exists everywhere. There's not a whole lot of us, myself included, that, when we were younger, and it's like you go to school and you say, what do I want to be when I grow up? I don't know many people that said, I want to be a recruiter. I kind of stumbled into this business, and many of my peers have the same stories. It's like, we didn't look for it. It found us, and it turned out to be a wonderful thing. So that being in mind, you meet recruiters from all over the place, from all walks of life, from all different backgrounds. There is no, to your point, Robin, there is no, hey, here's the image. Yes, there are things from a competency standpoint and a critical thinking standpoint that will aid in your success as a recruiter. But recruiters come from everywhere, and it's our responsibility to do that outreach and go seek them in areas where we might not have been looking before. And it's so, I was thinking about this when you asked, Robin, that, you're having employers saying we want a diverse slate of candidates, et cetera. How far we've come as an industry, because I remember early in my career, and I'm not going to date myself and say how long I've been in the business, but early in the career, it was almost like when a client would ask you to diversify in your candidates, it was wrong to say, okay, because then you'd be ruling out and discriminating people who are qualified. Our job was seen as, hey, we're going to recruit. We're going to give you the best possible qualified pool of candidates. You decide who to hire, but it's not our job to discriminate based on those categories. And it's not that we're discriminating now, but we're just opening up and saying, you know what? We should have a diverse slate of candidates. We should have equal opportunity for all. And it's got to be more front of mind to focus and find those candidates. So it's nice to see how we've evolved as an industry, because it wasn't always the case.
And to add to that, John, I think we have to tap into the areas and have job fairs in them areas and stuff like that. Don't put it just in certain areas. Go into the pockets where people might not be familiar with any kind of employment at all. And I love that. You know, they say danger areas. I want to be in that area because you know what? There's a lot of potential job seekers right there.
Well, and that gets back to the thing of, you know, there's more and more acceptance now. You know, do you need a degree to be successful at certain careers? You don't need a degree to be successful at recruiting. You need a certain skill set and a background and a gumption and a drive and motivation. But there's a lot of people that do not have a college education that are very successful recruiters. And again, it takes the forethought and the open-mindedness of a company's leadership to accept that. Because again, reverse yourself 20 years. I'm sorry, you needed a degree, you needed good SAT scores, you needed good, GPA, all that kind of stuff, or you weren't considered. Those things don't directly correlate to success in our industry. There's a lot of intangibles that someone has to have. You can be the smartest book person in the world and be a miserable recruiter. And conversely, you cannot be a big person on school, but you can be a very successful recruiter, because ours is all about building relationships and listening and bonding. And it doesn't mean you have to have a college degree to do that.
Getting back to the Women in Leadership Interest Group at ASA, I think we've really tapped a nerve. We've really identified a need in our community, right? I'm talking about community all the time. And I see it also this, and John, I don't know if it was John or John, when I was talking to you about this yesterday, I feel like this industry we used to be much more competitive internally, and people would be, not sharing information. They were worried about their position and how this, anyway, now I feel like there's so much more collaboration and women helping women across all levels, across all all verticals of staffing is part of this initiative. And it is education, and it is support, and it is sharing our stories and sharing our challenges and sharing our experiences with one another, so that the next generation or different generations of people, because we have all kinds of ages in the industry. As a matter of fact, I think across all occupations, the millennials are the biggest population in the workforce right now.
They are.
So we all have a lot to learn from one another, and the Women in Leadership Interest Groups gives a platform for that.
That's
and
awesome.
It's not going anywhere, you guys. It is just expanding.
I was going to say, you're just getting started. Holy cow.
I'm excited.
It's grown fabulous. I am too.
I got to ask you, Robin, when do you sleep? You're everywhere.
I'm big on 8 hours. I'm just saying.
Hey, John, I thought I didn't sleep. Robin's got all these events going on. I'm thinking, does she ever have time to do anything else?
She has an amazing amount of energy. And
I love it.
The thing I love about Robin is, her passion is genuine and authentic. I was blessed when I was, when we came together, and it has been a great collaboration throughout. And much of what we do is what we're seeing a lot in the industry. And I've always been that way. It's like, I'm an open book. I'm happy to share and for the benefit of all. And it doesn't matter if I benefit from it or not. It's all about helping the whole boat rise up to the tide, so to speak. I know I just got that analogy wrong, but I'm not gonna go back on it.
But ASA and SA, give us, and TechServe, give us this place to gather and this place to share and collaborate and from different perspectives. SIA more from the analysis perspective, but ASA from this community perspective. And I think we all needed that so much over the last 15 months, because frankly, we could still be in that. If it weren't for vaccines, we would still be in that very isolated place. but we weren't isolated because of video and because of new technology and because of organizations like ASA and SIA and others. We have found community in different places. And I really do think that has been a silver lining of this pandemic. People, I think, are appreciating connection in new ways and recognizing how we found it when we couldn't physically be together. And I think it actually benefited the women in leadership interest group.
That's awesome. Well, it sounds like it did, because you guys took advantage of the opportunity, and it didn't slow you down. If anything, it broadened your base because more people could join and participate because they didn't have to be physically present, which is a wonderful thing.
And the level of speakers that have been tapped into. I mean, I love the idea. I've always loved the idea of reading a book and hearing the author. You know, it's so rich and fulfilling and interesting and educational. And that's really been both at ASA and then in this Women in Leadership. I mean, in this little informal lady leaders book club. And people are so excited. You think I'm excited and passionate. Everybody in this group, you know, Joyce Russell, and I don't know if you both know her, John, I can't imagine that you wouldn't. And Richard, I don't know if you've had a chance to meet her yet. You'll meet her at Staffing World because she's the chairperson of ASA this year. And she also is the president of Adecco Foundation for North America. And before that, Adecco North America. I mean, she is an extraordinary woman, and she's a perfect example. She was the first book club, right? Where we got together and talked and read her book, Put a Cherry on Top, which is really her management philosophies that she's developed over 30 years of being a leader in the staffing industry. And it's just fascinating to hear her stories. And these are examples of lifting and rising up everyone.
Well, and again, to the benefit of what you're saying, the silver lining in COVID, does that happen if we don't have the Zooms and the WebEx teams and the streaming abilities where people are just used to the fact that, hey, we're going to do this over video? Does that happen if it needs to be together? And I don't know if it does or not.
Well, I think it's a hybrid now. I think it's just like the work environment. Some people are going to stay home working. Some people want to be half and half. Others, I mean, I just had an offer. I have an offer going out today. And in the offer, says in the first year, you're going to work in the office 70% of the time. Second year, you're going to work in the office 50% of the time. I mean, that would have never happened a year ago, 2 years ago. None of that language, none of that conversation.
That's a pretty good opportunity. Sign me up, right?
Richard's like, wait a minute, what's that job?
And the person only lives 30 minutes from the office.
Nice.
Right? But in today's world, I would say now 70% of the searches, anybody can live anywhere. We are, and now people are starting to begin to go back into the office in some hybrid capacity, but none of us even know what it's really ultimately going to look like. I have to tell you guys, I've been running a remote business for 10 years. I was so happy that I didn't have commercial real estate to deal with, that I didn't have to change my business model because everybody already had everything they needed. Frankly, we hired to this model. We managed to this model. And I'm so happy now that I don't have to have any discussion in my company about, are we going back to the office?
You can hang out at the beach house all day, right?
Huge advantage. And that's, and that allowed you probably not to skip a beat with respect to, just keeping the business going, which is great. Yeah, I mentioned I'm in Nashville. This is the first business trip I've taken since pre-COVID. And it was this week, and it was odd, but good in the same way. I'm seeing folks I haven't seen in a year, recruiters that work out here.
I know.
But even our company, we're not going back, for the most part, we're not going back to a full-time in the office model. It's going to be hybrid because that's a happy medium. So we'll have a rotation type of thing. But we've learned over the last 15 months that we can do our jobs in a remote capacity. And we've learned to trust our people that they can be productive. And we learned how to manage them in a remote capacity to hold them to task. So I agree with you. I think the whole framework of business is going to look a lot different once everything, quote unquote, reopens.
I think it's so exciting. And I've always been about employees for life. Like, how do you hire people and keep them for a long time? And you've got to embrace the whole person,
Right.
because they have children, they have
Agreed.
master's degrees they want to go get, they have ailing parents, they have a life. Maybe it's I'm on a basketball team and I want to, I play twice a week, whatever it is. So, honestly, at Me Derby, we're a small company, but I've got one person that's been with me for 27 years, another person that has been with me for 21 years, 14 years, 15 years, 7 years, 8 years. I mean, it is super tenured, but you only do that by supporting the whole person.
Totally agree. And that's more, I think that's more accepted now than ever. Again, as a result of COVID. Not that this stuff wasn't going on before COVID, but it's almost like sometimes you had some employees that had to hide things they were doing. They couldn't share it because it was seen as a conflict. Oh, you're leaving now, type of thing. Versus, now if you've got an outside interest, if you've got a side hustle, if you've got an ailing parent or loved one, if you've got a kid that you've got to deal with something at school, everything now is like, yeah, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Take care of it. We know you get the work done, and that's all that matters. And all of a sudden you're, it is about the whole person. You're right, Robin. And I think that's one for those leaders that do embrace the whole person, like yourself, they tend to have longer tenure and retention in their staff because they appreciate the fact that the people they work with and for are doing so and accepting them for all of who they are and not just for the work they produce.
Why do I care? As a matter of fact, I love the fact that I've got, people on my team that, they're picking their kids up for school. They're walking them to the bus stop. The kids come home from school, they get them set up with their homework. I mean, whatever, they have to drive them to their soccer mat. It doesn't matter. We, as recruiters, we're on our phones. We're on our laptops. We're closing deals when we're on vacation.
True.
We do whatever we have to do.
Exactly.
So
it doesn't stop.
So I just
Robin, can you say that again to all the recruiters out there that we work 24/7? Tell them that again. We always say that on our show, 24/7.
It's true. And my kids, all of our kids know it. They know not to interrupt us. However, I have two boys, and one of them said to me one time, I know you run your own business. I know you've got all these people that rely on you. I never felt like you that we weren't the first priority.
Oh,
wow.
Right? I know.
What more can you ask?
That's awesome.
Right?
Wow.
I know.
So you're doing it right, Robin.
Well, but
Wow.
we can all do it like that. There's no reason why we can't. And again, COVID, transformational time. Who knows what all this means? But it does mean, I think, better work-life balance. And we already knew that the millennial generation has really been driving that. I mean, we all know that. And some people do want to get back in the office, but others can be super productive. Isn't it about productivity? Isn't it about getting the job done?
Exactly.
Yes. And the beautiful thing is those that want to be back in the office full time, guess what? They can. But you've got the choice now whether or not you want to come in full time, whether or not you don't. Because there are some people that would prefer. I agree with you. And hey, amen to that. And there are some people that say, you know what, I don't want to. And some people want to be in the middle. And I think you're going to have a mixture of all the three. And again, to your point, it's all about producing. And as long as you're producing, really shouldn't matter.
Be anywhere.
I mean, I know this sounds trite, you guys, but and everybody's done these before, but when over the years I've done those, what's the most important thing to you? Anyway, being happy. I want to be happy. And being happy means balance.
Mm-hmm.
And you can call it work-life balance. You don't have to call it work-life balance. But I want to be as fulfilled in my work as I am in my personal life. And that actually is hard to accomplish, but it's absolutely accomplishable. And how we show up in the world as leaders and how we create those kinds of support and that kind of support and those kind of opportunities for our teams and how we model that behavior. It's like really empowering for our organizations, for our children. Mm-hmm. And, being happy is a subjective perspective, but putting people to work every day, creating an environment where I've got such an engaged team of people who are having a lot of success and finding a lot of meaning in their work. Everybody contributing at the highest levels they can in their organizations and therefore in their own personal lives and communities. I mean, I don't think it gets much better than that. That makes me happy.
You're right. And guess what? With happiness comes positive mindset, which means it's a magnet, right? Everybody's going to be attractive to you. And boom.
Totally.
So now we got off the topic of women leadership.
No, I'm loving the energy, John. What do you think?
That's what tends to happen during this show, Robin. We have something to spearhead a discussion, and then we never know where it's going to go. So
that's why it says no limits.
Exactly.
Well, kudos to both of you for like creating something new and super interesting. This live video feed where you're focused on talking about topics that are important to recruiters and therefore important to everybody.
There you go. Yes. Because if it's important to recruiters, it should be important because we drive everything.
So am I going to see both of you at Staffing World?
Oh, you're going to see us. And Richard, tell her what we're going to do at Staffing World.
We'll be at Staffing World at one of the restaurants or bars set up there, and you can come on in live and speak. So we will be there. Recruiters with No Limits Live will be at Staffing World.
We'll be broadcasting from Staffing World.
Okay, yes. So I would go Monday night because anybody that's coming to the pre-cons, they're going to be there Monday night, right? All the movers and shakers are there by Monday night.
Oh, no pressure, Richard.
Oh, then I got to be there, right? I got to be there.
So Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night.
Hey, and you said, Robin, you don't have to be a female to attend the pre-con. Anybody can attend it, right? So if I wanted to come, it'll be okay, Absolutely. Right? It's not like I'm crashing the party.
Absolutely. Get on the Staffing World website because I don't think that the Women in Leadership is the only pre-con, but since I'm so involved with that, that's, I'm very familiar with what that looks like. But sign up now. Actually, I think, June 11th is one of the cutoffs. So to get your early bird discount, got to sign up before June 11th. Before June 11th. And, get on the Gaylord website, get your rooms nailed down. You got to, these rooms, they fill up. So that's always one of my strategies, you guys, for any conference. Very first thing, even before registering, get your hotel rooms.
Proactive.
Great advice.
It's going to be here before you know it.
I know. Ooh. It's going to be a blast.
It is exciting. Hey, Robin, real quick, where can people find you that maybe are not part of ASA yet, but they want to join a leadership group and try to get involved? I think there's people out there that might be interested in this, but are not members yet. How can they reach out?
Well, if you want me directly, go to my website. My contact information is there. It's mederby.com, or I'm Robin at mederby.com, and I'm happy then to refer. If ASA's Women in Leadership Group isn't the right place, you do have to be a member of ASA to participate in that, and your company has to be a member. It's more the company, and then you become. So that's number one. But if anybody reaches out to me directly, then I will refer them to the best resource that I'm aware of.
There it is. Hey, Johnny, awesome. Final thoughts, my man.
Holy cow. Robin, this has been outstanding. We have to have you back for more.
Oh, yeah.
Final thoughts were, as we grow as an industry, we've got to make a concerted effort to promote diversity and inclusion across race, gender, creed, color, all that falls under that category. We can't just leave it up to chance and see what's going to happen. And I think the biggest thing that I took away was, and it makes total sense, we're always encouraging referrals from our people, but you're right, Robin, if we get referrals from our people, it's going to tend to produce the same profile, which while it may be productive, isn't always the healthiest option. I'm blessed to work in a community or in a company where when I walk out on the floor, holy cow, it's the United Nations, and I love it. Very diverse and a big effort from the top on D&I, and more companies have to continue that movement and recognize, let's close that gap. If that was staggering, the gap where you said women in management positions, but then when you went up to executive management, the big decline. We've got to be proactive and close that gap because there's a lot of talent out there that we're overlooking.
Well, and I invite everybody to think about requiring a diverse slate with every slate of candidates that you consider for every hire in your organizations internally. That would make the biggest impact in our business. I'm not saying make the decision solely based on a diversity category, but I'm saying have diversity and think outside the box and recruit outside the box and hire for potential, not just for experience.
For personal preservation, Robin, though, there's one thing I cannot participate in. I don't think I can do Woman Crush Wednesday because I don't think my wife would understand that it's strictly professional.
Well, just get on Lauren Jones. Follow Lauren on LinkedIn, and you'll see her Women Crush Wednesdays. And the degree that she gets inside of that person's, capabilities and attributes and psyche is amazing. And go on and listen to the Edge podcasts that Leslie Vickery is putting out, once every couple of weeks. It's fascinating. Exactly.
Well, I'm going to wrap it up here, John. I say what, Robin, wow, what an inspiration. I'll tell you what, for all the women out there in staffing, let's give them a clap. This is a big, wow.
I'll give them all a clap.
Exactly. Robin, just you alone, the inspiration that you give myself, John, and everybody else around you, women, men, you are what the staffing industry is about. So to my heart, you're a family member for now, forever. Swear to God on that. But no, at the end of the day, it's all about enjoying life and making an impact. And you and all the groups and everything that you line up is making a big impact. I can't say anymore. Hey, it was a great show. Thank you again for coming on. We'll definitely have you back at another time. Enjoy the beach. You're welcome to join and invite us anytime you want, Robin. We'll come to the beach, right, John?
That's right.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, John.
You're welcome. Next week, we have another super guest. I'm not going to tell you who it is. You'll have to find out on Monday during the promo flyer. But till then, we'll see you next Wednesday at 1 o'clock.
Take care.
Bye-bye.